Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Loscon. This is our science track. We have Melora Larson and Alfred Nash from JPL, and they're going to give us a virtual tour of JPL. This is exciting. Please take it away.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Okay. As Michelle mentioned, we are Doctors Alfred Nash and Melora Larson. We both work at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Yeah, we've both been there for about working towards 30 years. Not quite there yet, but more than 25.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Advance the slide here. Okay, so if you're not familiar with where the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is, it's in Pasadena, California, the home of the Rose Parade. If you've watched that on New Year's Day.
Or gone there in person. Since Loscon.
That's right. It's just up the freeway from the Norton Simon Museum where they do the televised broadcasts. Nestled up against the mountains in the San Gabriel Valley.
And it sort of looks like a little city off the side of the 210. So if you ever go west on the 210 out of Pasadena, and you always wondered what that little city was off to your right, off against the mountains, that's the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I mean, I always wondered before I worked there. So.
And now you know.
And now I know.
Yeah. So JPL got its start on Halloween, 1936, testing rocket engines. The people that got things started there, they had been working at the Caltech campus, but they were told to stop blowing things up on campus and go up where they wouldn't bother anybody up in the hills. So that's what they did. There's a CBS series about Jack Parsons, who's the handsome looking man off there to the right. Interesting character, colorful.
Super instant, yeah. No, I mean, then there's some books about him too that talk about all the things he was into.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite an upstanding citizen. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, so this is the present day entrance. If you were coming to JPL for a tour, you would come in through the main gate.
And if they have open house again, this is again where you would go.
Yeah.
Or when, sorry.
When, that's right. And the guard shack has on it, welcome to our universe. So welcome to our universe. Okay. Everybody on a tour gets to wear a badge for the day. This is one of them with the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity rover on it. So this is your virtual badge for the day. Our first stop would probably be the museum. Right in the foyer of the museum is a copy of America's first satellite, Explorer 1. It's the stripy thing at the top there. On the left-hand side, you see a picture of Pickering, the lab director, Van Allen of the Van Allen belts fame, and Wernher von Braun holding up a model of Explorer 1. All the white stuff was basically the last booster stage to get it up all the way into orbit.
And then what makes Explorer 1 so special, and as far as not just being the US's first satellite, it actually did science. When Sputnik went up, it was primarily just a radio transmitter. It didn't have any science instruments on it, but it beeped. Yeah, it just beeped as it went by, and it was shiny. Explorer 1 had radiation sensors, and it had a microphone to listen for micrometeorites and
temperature gauge.
And had temperature gauge. And the person in the center, Van Allen, he used the data that he got from the satellite to determine more stuff about the radiation belts, stuff that wasn't known before, as far as at what altitude they start, and some of the strength and stuff. I mean, we know that people thought that we had radiation belts because of the auroras and things like that, but this is the first time that they proved that they were there. Yeah. And so, yeah, America might not have been first, but they certainly did. They did better stuff.
All right. The next thing we do is we take you pass this model into the main auditorium, which is where JPL conducts all of its major press conferences that you've undoubtedly seen on TV during various discoveries. One of the things I like the most in the von Karman Auditorium is a full-size model of one of the Voyager spacecraft. It's quite large.
Yeah, and it's not just it's a working model. It's what's called an engineering model. It was something that was built to make sure that all the parts went together and to try things out as they were putting the design together. So I mean, it's even more special than just being a statue.
Right. Yeah. And part of that is, all of the deployments, the whole thing had to fold up to fit inside a rocket. And so the radioisotope power system off to the left, you can see it's on a jointed arm that folds up. Same thing on the right, the science instruments that needed to be away from the main body of the spacecraft, especially the camera at the end of the arm that took all of those pictures of Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune
and all their moons.
And all their moons, including Europa, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. Including Europa.
Including
yeah,
Europa.
I'm not quite tall enough to get my.
And both of the Voyager spacecraft have left the solar system. The sun no longer affects the space that they're in, but they're still talking to us through the big, large white dish up at the top.
Yeah. And they've been out there more than 45 years. I think about 46 years. I think they've launched in 74.
Yeah, they're still going.
I take it back. They were launched in 77.
So
Yeah.
they're both out of the heliosphere?
Yep. They're both out of the heliosphere.
It took a little bit longer for Voyager 2 to do it because the path it took past all the outer planets wasn't as direct into the outer solar system. Mm-hmm. But it achieved it within like a few years after Voyager 1 did.
Yeah. And then, of course, right in the center is a faithful mock-up of the Golden Record with all those pictures and sounds and instructions on how to build a record player for the space aliens to enjoy.
Yeah.
So,
and in the museum, they have off to the side some of the sounds, something for you to play to listen to the sounds, and then they have a lot of the pictures that are on the record.
Yeah. All right. The next place we take you is the clean room where we assemble our new spacecraft.
Actually, the spacecraft assembly facility, which in the last month, it was on the outside of it, they just installed a giant NASA meatball, which is visible, meatball, which is visible from the 210. So if you see a building with a giant NASA symbol on it from the freeway, you're looking at the spacecraft assembly facility, which is where these big clean rooms are, where they put the spacecraft together. Yep.
This is a picture of the Perseverance rover, which is now less than 3 months out from landing on Mars. It'll land in February. This is a picture I took actually during a break one time during work. Big nuclear powered rover with laser beams and
so this
all
was
kinds
about
of fun.
A year ago when they were doing all the instrument installations. They didn't have the instruments on the arm yet, but they had a lot of the other ones on. So
this rover will create a set of sample tubes that will then be picked up by the Mars Sample Return mission to launch probably early part of the next decade, very late in this decade. Yeah. Okay. Another place that's popular on tours is our Mars Yard. This is an outdoor area that's actually made up to look like Mars. It's got red dirt and rocks and hills and all kinds of things like that. And they can test out autonomous operations of the rovers, how the rovers interact with the soil, how the instruments work.
And when they had started to notice some damage in Curiosity's wheels, they built themselves a test setup, which just rotated one of these wheels around and around, so that it could get a lot of miles on it, and watch to see what it was that was happening, that was causing the damage to Curiosity's wheels. And so they learned a lot about what were probable things that they don't want to have happen to those wheels. So they learned how to be very careful to try to keep them together, because that design got redesigned for Perseverance because of those damages. And the rover that they're showing here is called Scarecrow, which it's a nice little open type of package, but it has the same rocker arms and things like that Curiosity and Perseverance have.
Yeah. So they build all kinds of ramps, see how steep a hill the rovers can go up, and things like that.
Yeah, and how big of rocks it can go over and things like that too.
Yeah. And as Melora mentioned, they had that wheel on an arm just going in circles 24/7. And it was one of the loneliest sounds you'd hear late at night leaving the lab, just that thing crunching over the rocks over and over again. But it's a popular place to visit on tours. Lots of celebrities have come and had their pictures taken there and all that kind of stuff. Matt Damon came out. Yeah. The Martian himself came out and had his picture taken in the Mars yard.
Yeah, right before the movie was released. He did press in La Cañada and JPL for it.
Did Andy Weir come too?
Yeah. No, I mean, and he was a little, I mean, I actually got to go to at least one event where Andy Weir was one of the presenters. That was the official event. The fact that Matt Damon was on lab was not as well known until they tweeted the pictures. So he didn't. I mean, I've actually seen Morgan Freeman on lab, because he was there to promote one of a Nat Geo series that he was the narrator for. I never watched it, so I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah.
But I mean, in general, I mean, we get politicians more often than we get actors and writers. But
yeah, we had Jonathan Nolan came out
right.
with Kip Thorne, and they talked about the physics of Interstellar and things like that. So lots of people like to come to JPL.
Yeah, I guess I've seen Cameron. He came. Maybe he was involved in the same thing that.
Yeah, he was also involved in a camera on one of the rovers.
Yeah, maybe it was a different reason why he was there.
Yeah. Okay. One of the other things we have, this is in the main administration building, is a full-scale model of the Curiosity rover. For those of you who haven't heard the story, JPL wanted to put some JPL logos on the rover. NASA told them not to, but instead they put holes in the wheels that spell out JPL in Morse code all over the surface of Mars. So, and that's faithfully reproduced in the model.
There actually is some concrete in our main mall area where they have embedded that tire tracks that like Curiosity's wheels, so that you can see that Morse code in the cement. That survived the redecorating.
There are times when you guys remind us that yes, you are an offshoot of Caltech.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The next place that's very common on tours is the Space Flight Operations Facility. It has the highest designation the National Park Service gives to places of national significance. That was named in 1985. All of the major missions that JPL does have been operated out of the Space Flight Operations Facility, and especially the landings that have become so popular to watch, whether you're in Times Square watching Curiosity land, or TV or the internet watching Insight Land, or any of the others. And so, in fact, there's a plaque, once again, perhaps befitting our Caltech ties, where it actually says that, yea, verily, this is the center of the universe.
It's right there on the ground. You can't see it in this picture, but it's there.
It's embedded in the floor.
Yep.
And since I know lots of people watching this will probably be watching the landing of Perseverance come February, I just want you to know that the room where they do the last bit of the landing for those Mars missions, and everybody is so jubilant when they go so well, is right behind this glass wall right here in the room with the American flag. So it's just adjacent to this massive control facility that we use to communicate with all of the spacecraft, and actually, sadly for us both, since we worked on it, where they sent the last commands to turn off the Spitzer Space Telescope were actually also last January, were sent from this room. Okay, to talk a little bit about us, we both got our start at JPL working with the Space Shuttle. I only helped during operations. There's actually a picture of younger me there with 3 people making sure that I'm doing my job right.
I had the privilege or whatever of working about 6 months at Kennedy Space, off and on at Kennedy Space Center, and got to be essentially in the cargo bay of the Columbia Space Shuttle. Met a few of the astronauts that were on the crew when they were out for their training. But I mean, there were the people who wanted to put fingerprints on the space shuttle, and I'm like, yeah, but don't do that. But I mean, anyway, so it was super cool to be there, and because I was there for so long, I got to see 4 different shuttle launches. Not the one with the experiment on it, because I needed to be in Alabama, where Huntsville, Alabama, where the control center was. Which Al already was there, and I buttoned everything up, got on a plane in Orlando, and got to Huntsville, and I heard the launch on the radio, so at least I knew it had gotten off correctly. Yeah.
But she spent many weeks working while the shuttle was actually next to the launch tower there, doing the last bit of maintenance and topping off the fluids in the experiment and all of that. Yeah. And then the 2 of us were actually on opposite shifts during operations. I had a day shift, and she had graveyard, and so we would sort of high five morning and night.
We could eat dinner together.
We could eat dinner together, but that was about it. It was a long 2 weeks. Although the people at Marshall Space Flight Center did treat us to one of the most. It was over
Thanksgiving, so.
Treated us to one of the most amazing Thanksgiving potlucks I've ever experienced. They were very, very nice.
There was not much left by the time I got there.
Okay. One of the other things that we both worked on at different times was a test facility for the Spitzer Space Telescope. That's a picture of it off to the left.
Telescope, yeah.
The big 85 centimeter primary that then reflected light into the top of this tower. There was a secondary mirror that then sent the light all the way down to the bottom in the instrument, and a picture of the infrared universe that it took for many, many years, revolutionizing astrophysics before it was turned off in January. Discovered a couple of planets.
Mm-hmm. It launched in 2003, mm-hmm. and it was one of it came out of when NASA had the Great Observatory program, with Hubble certainly being the big star of the great observatories, but they also wanted to have satellites, observatories that looked in different wavelengths of light than what Hubble looks at. I mean, Hubble primarily looks at the same type of light that we can see, mostly visible light. It can look a little bit longer. It has an instrument that goes into what's called the near eye infrared, and it has an instrument that looks to the ultraviolet, the shorter wavelengths. So the other great observatories were the Compton Gamma Ray Observatory, the
Chandra.
yes, an X-ray observatory, and then Spitzer, which was for the longest time was known as the Space Infrared Telescope Facility, SIRTIF, which its original name when it was first thought of was actually Shuttle Infrared Telescope Facility, because they at one point thought that it would make sense to put an infrared telescope on the shuttle, and then they started thinking about it and changed their minds. So it took at least 10 years from when it was first thought of before anyone started doing the final, coming up with a design that NASA was willing to pay for. And then it took another 10 years after that for it to be launched. Because it was probably about 93 when they finally got to the design that the architecture that they ended up going with. And then, like I said, it launched in 2003.
Yeah. In fact, the testing of this telescope, the prototype telescope, was really what got SIRTIF started, because congressional staffers and other people like that were able to see that, no, you can really do something like this. It's really going to work and be okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably why it took 10 years to, once they had the design, is because they had to do the politics, had to convince people that it was worth paying for.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Kind of bringing us to present day. Right now, I work as the lead engineer of the so-called Team X. This is a picture of our Concurrent Design Center. This is where we design new missions in about 9 hours. My wife is a member of the team. She's the instrument chair.
Yeah, it seems like there was no instrument chair in that study.
Not in that study, nope.
Yeah, no, I see propulsion, I see science, I see.
Yeah, so this is where we work out, sort of the rough conceptual design, how big it's going to be, how much it's going to weigh, how much it's going to cost, how we might operate it. For all of our competed proposals and many of the assigned ones, the Mars programs come in for cost estimating work and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, almost all of the major ones go through at least once or twice.
Yeah. Okay, and we're working all virtual now, but we've still done lots of studies since COVID started. We did over 80 of these mission design types of studies. Okay, Melora, why don't you tell the folks about Clipper?
Well, I mean, I've talked about Clipper. So what I do mostly for my day job, besides managing a very small group of people who do formulation and proposal work, is I help make sure that one of the instruments that's going to fly on the Europa Clipper mission will be compatible with the spacecraft, that the interfaces between the two work, and that's sort of what I do. And so because I work on the payload and the instruments, I know what all the other instruments do, and there are, depending on how you count them, 9 or 10 other instruments. There is a magnetometer that's had a kind of a rough patch in its development, but it's still there. There is a radar, which you see the long, skinny antenna. These ones now are also long and skinny, or they're short and skinny. This is an older version of it. We're about to have our final design review of the whole space of the whole project next month. It's called a critical design review. While most of this pieces that get bolted together, they've already passed their critical design reviews, and some of them are building their flight hardware. The instrument that I work on is called ETHEMIS, Europa Thermal Imaging System. It's based on a instrument that's flying around Mars, that's just called THEMIS, and it sees temperatures, and so it will do a thermal map of Europa, which would be a way to tell whether or not there are any hot spots, any thin spots in the ice where you might get geysers or other places where the ocean's pretty close to the surface. And there's a lot you can learn about how smooth the surface is, or how jagged it is by how fast it warms up and how fast it cools off in the morning versus the day versus the nighttime. And so the instrument will fly over the same spots of the moon enough times that we can get a feel for that type of underlying fine detail on the structure, even if we can't image it. The other instruments on Clipper are two cameras, one very narrow image, similar to the camera that was on New Horizons, except for it can point on its own. There's a wider angle camera that provides more context images. There is a IR, I'll call it a camera, but it's a multispectral imager. So that takes images that also give you information about what type of light is being reflected off of it. And that gives you a lot of information about the chemistry on what's on the surface. And then we have a dust detector and just a mass spectrometer, something that will sniff at the atmosphere and be able to tell you what the atoms are. And finally, we have a UV camera on it. So the Clipper has pretty much a full spectrum of coverage for being able to get as much information. It will swing past the moon 40 to 50 times while it orbits Jupiter. It's easier to get in orbit around Jupiter than to get around orbit of a moon, first off. Second off, Europa is it's essentially in the middle of a radiation belt of Jupiter. So when you are close to Europa, the radiation level is similar to being at the center of a nuclear power plant. And so you don't really it's hard to have electronics survive that. So that's one reason why we swing past the moon and then go back out outside of the radiation for the bulk of each orbit. So we are expecting to start bolting everything together in about a year. I mean, bolting the spacecraft together with the instruments. The instruments will be ready then. We're still arguing over what ride we'll have, what rocket will take us, partially because there is a line in the congressional budget that's been there for a while that says we have to take the Space Launch System, the SLS. The SLS hasn't launched yet. And the first 2 or 3 have already been earmarked for Artemis and the lunar program. So that in our mind doesn't seem as real as, say, the fact that they have that the Falcon Heavy has become certified as a rocket. And I mean, the Falcon Heavy wouldn't take us there as fast, but the Falcon Heavy would get us there faster than some of the other options. So we're still not sure what our rocket will be, which is a little annoying from a practical point of view, but otherwise it's making pretty good progress and should launch in the middle of this decade, either 24 or 25.
Yeah. So maybe by the next time there's a real JPL open house, people will be able to see the Europa Clipper in the clean room.
Yeah, hopefully.
That would be nice.
Hopefully NISAR will be out of there by then.
Yeah. Yeah. So Europa's going to look for habitability, but then, as Melora mentioned, one of the things that's being worked on is a possible Europa lander. And one of the things that they're worried about is just how spiky the surface might be.
Yeah.
It might actually be big ice spikes. and the E-Themis instrument would be able to discern that.
That and the narrow angle camera, that one should be able to resolve things that are just 10 centimeters or something like that. So between the 2 instruments, we should get a good feel for how hard it will be to land on it, on that moon.
Okay, so you've seen a lot of places around JPL today. The museums down in sort of the lower left of the city. As Melora mentioned, the spacecraft assembly facility is kind of in the middle of the lower part, and actually right on the side of that building is where they put the meatball. You can see the Mars yard. It's the the reddish dirt up in the upper right-hand corner there.
We actually have an indoor Mars yard also, because sometimes you need, right there, because sometimes you need to have the better electronics and you don't actually need to be mobile. So it's kind of funny that to have it's still really pretty filthy because it's still covered in dust, but it is, when they were doing a lot of the tests on InSight, that they were all done on that in the indoor Mars yard, not on the outdoor one. But they don't have to worry about wind or rain.
Yeah. Including the tests on the mole, which is now finally, yay, under the surface. It's underground. The mole is underground.
Yay.
Yeah. And then the main administration building is the big, tall, black one, sort of off to the left, and the space flight operations facility is sort of hiding behind it. So about 7,000 people, like Melora said, a small city nestled up against the foothills that you can see from the 210 freeway.
And when we do have open houses, I mean, you can't get all the way up to a tour will take you up to the Mars yard, but some tours will anyway. But the open houses stay mostly pretty level, although they do let you go see we have a large machine shop also very close to the spacecraft assembly facility, and you get to see the machine shop, which is pretty cool.
So anyway, we hope this was a fun tour. It was fun for us to give it to you.
Yeah, thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Thank you for taking me on it, or taking all of us on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for setting this up. We really love Loscon.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're hoping to see you where we're in the same room someday.
Yes.
That would be nice.
That'll be wonderful.
Nice.
That'll be great.
I knock on wood that next year at this time we'll be able to have a real in-person Loscon.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming and enjoying these wonderful doctors tour. Thank you again. And if you enjoyed Loscon, please visit get your Loscon gear in the link below, Teespring. And thank you also to Susan Fox and KryptonRadio.com, Sci-Fi for your Wi-Fi, for hosting us.
Yes, thank you.